So, for as long as I've been alive, I've been fascinated with the idea of aliens, of beings like us from another planet visiting here and observing us. I always imagine it's because people aren't ready to handle it yet, not ready to integrate with another civilization that may have a technological progression much more advanced than our own. Um, I've heard about the Kenneth Arnold sighting, the Flatwoods monster, the Barney and Betty Hill incident, the children in Zimbabwe that mention that these beings, it was a close encounter of the third kind where they encountered these humanoid figures that emerged from craft which landed on their schoolyard or around there, rather. Um, Travis Walton, his story inspired a movie called Fire in the Sky. Carl Sagan used to say that we don't live in a privileged reference frame. Ever since I was a little kid, I would daydream and think about this, um, especially with TV shows like Ben 10. But then I would go to the library with my brother when we were kids, and I would check out books, about aliens and UFOs and the stories behind them and people talking about being abducted, especially Barney and Betty Hill. Like I remember hearing about their story first when I was little, and when Betty tells this story about them sticking a needle into her navel in order to like run some kind of medical experiment on them, and they were fascinated with Barney because he was an older gentleman and he had false teeth, and they were surprised about aging. They were interested to hear about that, and I guess it's something that those figures allegedly never experienced was aging. But then, that was all fascinating. But then, by the time night would fall, I'd find myself hiding under the covers, looking out from under the blanket with one eye, terrified that something from another planet was gonna abduct me and do the same thing to me. But then, as I've gotten older, I realized that just because just because you don't understand something doesn't mean that it's scary. And so, what better video game to try out while I talk about this subject than this one? They Are Here. Because this is kind of like facing a fear of mine, and um, that's what you got to do in life, right? The goal is to get stronger. Be not afraid. Yeah, be not afraid. So there are different classes of close encounters. There are close encounters of the first through fifth kind. The first kind of close encounter is visual, seeing an object in the sky, a UFO, an unknown. Today they call them UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomenon, but back in the day they called them UFOs, unidentified flying objects. In fact, the Kenneth Arnold sighting in 1947 uh, was the first one that coined the term flying saucer. Um, Close encounter of the second kind is a visual or physical effect, like electronic interference or marks on the ground from a craft that they see, that a witness may see. Close encounter of the third kind is seeing a humanoid or a robot or technology associated in connection with the flying object. A close encounter of the fourth kind is abduction or remembering a medical examination on yourself by these things, by these creatures, these entities, figures. Got to use the proper terminology here. Don't want to offend anyone who may or may not be a non human intelligence. And then CE5 is bilateral communication. That's close encounter of the fifth kind, is communicating directly with a non-human intelligence initiated by humans. Well, we're going to jump into this game while I talk about the modern aspects of the UFO phenomenon or the UAP stories. We're going to hop into the prologue first. So we're going to be following the story of Michael Anderson, who's serving at a military base near this farm that we're going to investigate. And we're going to see what happens.
Delta, this is
1979.
Alpha. We've an unidentified object at 270 degrees, 20 miles moving fast. Do you copy? Over.
Alpha, is that a meteor?
Negative. I'll try to get in touch. You entering controlled airspace. What are your intentions? Introduce yourself. No answer. Switching to heat control. Pushing down. Delta, I've strong interference. Say again. Communication lost. I try radio on different frequency. Alpha calls data. Unidentified object begins pushdown. 10 seconds to land. Saying again. 10 seconds to land. Over.
Delta on the line. Over to identify the object received. Urgent.
Roger. Sending response team.
Too long. Who's closest to the object?
Michael Anderson is 2 miles from the landing site.
Sending. Space. The object has landed. Your task is to identify the object without contact. Omega team will arrive in 1 minute. We'll conduct surveillance from the air. Drive with care. Report when you arrive.
In
I read you
2004.
5x5, sir. Out.
Wow. This is pretty good. In 2004, Commander David Fravor and Lieutenant Alex Diedrich were about to initiate a training mission flying FA-18 Super Hornets in association with the USS Nimitz off the coast of San Diego.
This is Omega. We see you. We are monitoring.
After takeoff, Commander Fravor and Lieutenant Dietrich were given real-world vector, they say. They were given a target to investigate because the USS Nimitz, it turned out, had been seeing radar anomalies pop up for about 2 weeks prior to the incident in question. They both had weapon systems operators sitting in the back seat of their jets, and they had no live ordnance. So instead of performing their routine training mission, they ended up going to a location that they were given by their commanding officers. And when they got there, they saw a tic-tac shaped object floating 50 feet above the water level. And they said that it was possibly interfacing with an unidentified submerged object. That's USO. It turned out for 2 weeks, the USS Nimitz was detecting these objects
Hello,
travel.
Major. This is Michael Anderson. I report radiation detected. The counter indicator is average.
Roger that. We're on flight here.
It turned out that for the 2 weeks prior to this incident, they were detecting these objects going from above the stratosphere at 80,000 feet to sea level in less time than it takes for the radar sweep, like the one I'm holding in my hand here.
We can blue light. Frames with the devices are still not. Numbers and all the instruments are not correct. Data is static. Continue the operation. Over.
Her jet?
The object is being detected and is approximately away from you. You don't notice movement. Over.
4 servicemen, men and women. They have eyes on this object, right? Lieutenant Dietrich decides that she's going to maintain her altitude, and Commander Fravor starts spiraling downward toward it. He says that it noticed him, and then it started to mirror his movement in the opposite direction, going up toward him.
Omega, what the hell is going on with your devices? Radiation levels are rising. Over.
It got worse.
Like children on a
Dave, can you hear
playground.
me? Something strange is happening. Devices break down. Indicators are constantly changing. It can't be that everything breaks down at the same time. Seems that there is some kind of anomaly here.
This is the base. Omega, stay away from the object. Observe the object from a distance.
Commander Fravor says that like children on a playground, he cut across the circular motion that him and the object were making. He tried to go directly toward it to see if he could get a closer look, and when he did that, it vanished. When they were going back to meet up with the USS Nimitz, the object appeared on radar again, where they were going to be. Now, it's heavily documented, heavily well documented, that this object appeared at their cap point, that's the terminology they used, before they even knew where they were going. That's one of the creepiest aspects about this. And the fact that it was going from above the stratosphere to sea level.
This Omega, the blue light. The radiation is getting stronger. Wait, what? Need to stop the
What the hell's going on there?
Well, the creepiest thing is, like this machine in my hand right now on the right side that's doing the radar sweep, according to the story, according to the legend, in less time than it takes for a radar sweep like that, these objects are going from above the stratosphere to sea level, which I hear would require the energy expenditure of 2 nuclear bombs going off. So whatever kind of objects these things are, whatever kind of craft they are, they don't use conventional propulsion systems. Planes, helicopters, what have you, they need the 4 aspects of flight, or the 4 characteristics of flight: thrust, lift, weight, and drag. And these things can sit stationary for 5 hours at a time, according to people like Lieutenant Ryan Graves, I think it's Lieutenant Ryan Graves, or Major Ryan Graves. I'm not actually sure what his title was, but he's now the director, the founder and director of Americans for Safe Aerospace, because he says that after a radar update in 2015, they went from an analog system to a digital system, and they went from seeing UFOs on radar every so often to almost every day. And he said that when he was a Navy pilot, he also has a master's degree, I think, in engineering or something to that effect. I don't remember what his qualifications are, but Lieutenant Ryan Graves is no fool, and he was a member of the armed forces who flew jets for the Navy. They don't just let morons fly jets, guys. Well, anyway, I'll get off my soapbox with that. It turns out that, according to him, they were running into UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomenon, or UFOs, almost every day. And he says that they pose a flight safety risk to commercial air pilots too, to commercial airlines. It's a fascinating world we live in, and the story just develops more and more every day.
Omega, fly away. Michael Anderson, follow protocol.
Fuck. What the hell is going on?
Oh man.
Can anyone hear me? Over. Can anyone answer? Damn it.
I don't know about you guys, but I would be switching to night vision and then going back in the opposite direction. Is that coming from the radio? Bro, that sound is coming from the radio. Oh, that's fucked up. In 2022, there were congressional hearings because of a whistleblower complaint filed by Major David Grush. Yeah, I'm a little thrown off by the game that I'm playing right now, forgive me. Let me start over with that aspect of the story. So in 2022, that was the first congressional hearing that took place because hold on. Yeah, Major David Grush, a former Air Force intelligence officer, had to file a whistleblower complaint. See, the thing is, he was on the UAP task force investigating the UFO subject. And what he discovered after interviewing 50 assets of his is that he believed that there's a program, a USAP, it's called an Unacknowledged Special Access Program, with no congressional oversight. And what it's doing, effectively, is it's tasked with the retrieval and study of non-human intelligence, their technologies, and he even says that they probably have biologics associated with the crashes that they investigate. And he's never laid eyes on it, but he had enough information to file this complaint, and he did have evidence, but he just wasn't able to go public with some evidence because it's considered a national security issue, a national security matter that's higher than weapons of mass destruction. This is real verifiable information. You can look this up. The hearing was actually live streamed on YouTube. You could watch this yourself. You can even still watch it to this day. It's still on the internet. Well, anyway, who else was there? The man that I mentioned earlier. You see, Alex Dietrich from the story that I mentioned earlier, she didn't want to come out with this. She was actually holding their commanding officers, holding a grudge against them, because she investigate this UFO, this UAP, the Tic Tac is what they called it, without any weapons. And she was saying, well, what if we had to defend ourselves? She was a little upset that they didn't have anything to defend themselves with. And then also, just to kind of skip around the story here, Commander Fravor, he was there at the congressional hearing. And Luis Elizondo, he's the former director of ATIP, the Advanced Aerial Threat Identification Program. He was a part of this investigation on the UAP subject. And he said that as soon as he quit his job from there, lying about all this time, he was able to come out and say, no, this is a real thing. This is something that they take very seriously. Well, this congressional hearing, the whole bottom line about this congressional hearing is that apparently this unacknowledged special access program may or may not be called Immaculate Constellation. That was a new development that came out recently this year, or late 2024, rather, and they might actually be safeguarding all this UFO stuff with private industry and investigating it through private industry, and that's how it's been kept a secret all this time. That's one mechanic used to keep it all a secret from the public. But another mechanic that might be keeping it all secret is that the federal government has no oversight. There's no congressional oversight over this task force that's allegedly capturing or recovering these UAPs, these UFOs. And they're keeping it from the government. So in our legislation called the National Defense Authorization Act for the fiscal year of 2024, they actually revealed to the public. In this information, it's a public document. You can look this up too. The legislation in there says that it says that they believed legislation is necessary to get these special access programs to cooperate, and they're gonna use the money. They're gonna try to see if they can pull funding from a lot of these programs if they don't start playing ball with Congress and telling them what's going on. That's a little unsettling to see right here in front of me while I'm telling that story. At any rate, this is it's all. It doesn't matter how much they hide it. Its stuff is coming out anyway, from what it looks like. I like to imagine that they're friendly. Now this right here.
God, what is this? Unbelievable.
What do you do? Oh, what the fuck? What do you do, man? What do I do? What do you do in this situation, guys? Like, what do you do if you're just surrounded like this? What do you do if you're just surrounded like this? Do you just run? Do you just run? Bro, fuck it, I'm out. Oh shit. Well, you have it, guys. They're here.